Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you so much for making it. Kiriti, why has it taken so long to start commercializing spacesuits? Because up to now, as you know, most of them have been state-sponsored ventures.
My analysis, again, this is my analysis, very few industries are capital intensive and labor intensive, and this happens to be one. So you have to have perhaps the backing of the state to pump in all the infrastructure money, and then you need the right kind of talent to help you put it there. And getting them together has been very difficult for reasons which are obvious, and funding from the government. So you need the right policy conditions to incubate that. So I believe it never came together. And this is the best time to actually engage in something like bringing those aspects together. So you could bring down the costs on both sides, which is happening as we speak, I think.
Sharon, how is Dassault Systems collaborating with Kiriti's program?
We get in touch with Metakosmos about more than a year ago. I think he saw one of our advertisement of a road
A flying ambulance.
e-roaster where we actually help startup company.
A bit like a Harrier jump jet.
Exactly. So you could get to the patients quickly. And Dassault has helped the startup put together the entire concept all the way down to the prototype. So they made a marketing program around it, and that's what got my attention.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I interrupted you, Sharon.
No problem. Okay, so I think we Dassault System have this mission right now to actually help startup companies, which we know there are many coming out all over the place, especially in the very new area like drones, space, mobility, electrification. All these new technology are all coming together, and we want to help startup to really make that journey. And Dassault System has been a very advanced software. So what we want to actually is to make this software available to even small startup, starting with like 3 few-man operation, and then they can scale very quickly. So how do we do this? We actually have designed a 3D experience platform. It's a platform where we put all our best technology on the platform, and it's on the cloud, so that user like Metakosmos, as they grow the number of users and also the multi-discipline, they can just kind of like pull down whatever functions or modules that they need to use. Yeah, so that's what we are doing in terms of the startup. So I'm very privileged to be given the opportunity to set up a team of people in Asia Pacific supporting the startup. And we are online supporting them using our latest platform, because we all know, right, when you use an application on your desktop, only one person have the information. And today, how we seeing, like what Kiriti said, right? There are so many people he needs to bring together to make this work. And today we do see startup bringing all the best collaborators together in one place and collaborate. And in this journey, the Dassault System platform capture all the inputs, all the contribution in one place. So at any one point of time, you kind of can roll back and roll forward what we have went through, which is not the case in most other applications. So like now he has a lot of new people joining him. They can just jump on into the system, and they can also see what Kiriti actually spoke to us, even as a vendor 12 months ago. And this is right now, I think, the best power we can give to the industry for Dassault. So Dassault really want to collaborate with startup like Metakosmos and really help them to scale, because the startup at the beginning, first 1-2 years where they are doing trying to raise money, is really small. It's really like, yet they need to do a lot of things. But the moment the money come in, the series people come in, series funding come in, zoom, you need to go very fast.
Right.
And sometimes people fail there because why? They lost all the information in the front. Because could be a totally, or I would say, big group of very different people, new people joining. And so I felt that the 3D experience platform is really perfect. Intention when we designed the platform is really to do that collaboration. And also for me, knowing Metakosmos is a joy, because I'm saying, wow, this guy is making spacesuit. Wow, I have met many companies make cars, on those big planes, make drones. I don't have a customer that makes suits. So I'm very intrigued. That's why I say, okay, I want to be here.
Now, Jason, I know that you are very much into and understand why there's a need for the Zoom effect, shall we say, in the space industry. What do you think about the future of astronauts in Australia and potentially, ultimately, one day wearing one of Kiriti's suits?
Well, we want to buy one of his suits like in 5 months because we got parabolic flight. So what I really like about his business model is that he's going to turn the whole idea of a spacesuit up on its head, because a spacesuit has always been a peripheral kind of product that's built, manufactured, bespoke, never sold. Nobody ever comes up with the idea of selling a spacesuit. And he actually looked at this, okay, it's not just a spacesuit, but there are components of this that sell to defense, that sell the different layers of education and entertainment, which I found was, and got a customer very quickly with that. And then as we're doing our own parabolic flight campaigns, because Saber does a bunch of them for various things, some of them touch on medical health. And we struggle. We're like, where are we going to find the sensors that we got to stick on the body to understand things like heart rate, skin temperature, alcohol absorption, all sorts of different characteristics.
And these would be non-invasive, as Kiriti was saying.
These are all non-invasive. And as we get on, and that, like the sensor tech's gotten pretty good, right? And he's on top of that because he's talking to all the researchers that do that. But when we go on these flights, we see at least a half a dozen other researchers on those flights that are going through the same struggle. And there's nobody to help them. Okay, they're all trying to figure it out on their own. It's all very bespoke because the companies that normally build spacesuits, they're building spacesuits for my flight, vertically integrated. And by democratizing all of that, anyone who's trying to do research and things that could plug into space will get a chance to play. That's the first thing. The second thing is those people that have innovation and products and ideas and capability is now accessible to the astronauts and the people in the sky. So I actually think that this whole concept has a potential, if we support it, to really upend that whole calculus. I think it's going to be a very good business. So the question of what is the future of astronauts, we got our first Australian astronaut selected by the European Space Agency. I know that there's a lot of people interested in it, probably about 5,000 to 10,000 people who would have applied from the Australian scene alone, right? So that's an astronaut program that's starting. You've got an astronaut program with Saber where we're looking on the product side. If we get enough products, then we could pay for an astronaut ticket with Axiom. So Axiom's a commercial program that's reaching out to Australia.
And that's part of the International Space Station project, isn't it? The idea to use their microgravity laboratory.
They won the contract to take over the International Space Station. The International Space Station is going to go away. They're going to keep it alive as long as they can because there's a lot of cost and a lot of capability.
But I think Axiom's going to construct modules which will eventually break away and form space stations of their own, free ranging space stations.
But those are going to take over. And there are other companies out there that are also quite credible, well-funded. Voyager's another one. They're also out of the United States. So there are companies that are building space stations. What we're looking at in the next 10 to 20 years is low Earth orbit being a place for space manufacturing. And the moment that happens, you need astronauts. The moment you need astronauts, you need spacesuits. Done. Okay? And it needs to be commercial and modular and scalable and everything that Kiriti talked about today.
So Kiriti suit in that sense ticks all the boxes.
Metakosmos,
potentially.
Every single one of them. So that's why I see it as a business, not just a toy that somebody's going to build and has to latch on to a prime in order to get into the sky. I actually think he could do it on his own. Getting Ryan, by the way, congrats on getting Ryan. I know his background. He's a weapon, massive credibility brought to your shores with him. So all the items are kind of lining up for this. But the long story of human space flight is LEO's going to be the destination. The moon's going to be a bespoke destination maybe in about 10 years.
Not before 10 years.
Don't make it an absolute. This is maybe 5 years. But in terms of a place where if Metakosmos has its suit ready in 5 years and the relationships done by then, you can see a Metakosmos suit doing lunar work in 5 years. You can see it. If you're talking about scaling and where human spaceflight is going to go, it's either Earth orbit, or it's the moon, or it's Mars, or the Artemis base as well. Those are really the 4 destinations. Some people are talking about Venus. I think that's much further away. Mars is probably less important because further a way to get there.
Here's another question. This is very futuristic. And if you really cast ahead to the future when, you know, we're exploring places like the icy moons of Saturn and Jupiter, Enceladus, Europa, etc., is it conceivable that we could have astronauts walking on those surfaces, possibly in the Metakosmos suit in the future?
In the distant future, I think anything's possible in the solar system. I want to talk about, I mentioned things like the moon and for the most part in the short term, because these are the customers we see in our mission control center today. We got customers that are flying satellites to the moon, and we see Artemis and where that's going. You know, we don't see any human spaceflight going further out for quite some time, maybe 20 years.
Could you take us through the differences in the suits? You know, there's the internal suits, the external suits, and then the hybrids, if you will, that go both ways. What's your thoughts on producing those? I mean, is there a target in the initial instance? Internal is obviously seemingly a lot easier. Take us through that. And is it, I assume that the underlying data pack, sensor pack, is the same across all of those, but you're going to have to come up with different fabrics, perhaps different hard shells, possibly, perhaps to protect the joints or whatever. So could you give us some insight on your thinking along those lines?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two aspects to that. The first one is cash flow. That's going to determine my short-term lifespan. So we need to look for avenues, as the gentleman mentioned, to look at potential use cases that could generate cash flow for the underlying base suit that could go into multiple domains. Could be land, underwater, or even air. We're looking at pilots. Now, as we do that, we're also looking at designs for the exosuits, which will have embedded exoskeletons in them. This is to ensure once you build pressure, you could reduce the joint torques, and that would have an impact on the energy expenditure. So what we're trying to do right now is see how we could achieve that balance, because I know one way to fail definitely is to build a suit for everything. So that's something that we have at the back of our mind. While we take the boundary conditions for space, we're kind of exploring what would be feasible with the IVA, which are your internal suits, and you need to go through those phases. You can't leapfrog. As much as I love the idea of appearing one day randomly and building those EVA suits, you need procedural knowledge, operational knowledge, and data that you collect from your testing. So we're going to do that through the base layers and then the IVA style suits that could go into different environments here on Earth and then go towards the final EVA.
So with your current thinking, do you think, starting with IVA, are you looking at add-ons to that, or are you looking at a totally different suit to get to the EVA suit?
IEVA is appealing simply because it could serve both the needs. What we'd like to do, obviously, is to keep the weight as low as possible. That's going to determine the kind of components that we could put on. Right now, we've separated everything as hard components and soft components. So the structures aspect of this is going to change based on essentially where the market is going to come from the first few years. So it's going to be fast jet pilots. A good example is Tom Cruise in Maverick movie. As much as the hypothetical Dark Star thing hit 10 Mach, I think we have an opportunity to build something like that for testing purposes, to understand human performance. And that could lead our way towards the final version.
Jason, back to you if I may ask another question. How do you see the Wolfpack Space Hub working with projects like Kiriti's to advance essentially the future of space in Australia?
Oh, this is a perfect fit, because this is exactly the type of project which would it's a pure space project, right? Yeah, he's got other customers, but really the motivation is to get something into space. So for us, it's about building relationships, finding people who understand space. I could join his advisory board, for example, advising him on the space component, but also bringing customer opportunities, being a customer for him as well. But because Saber has an interest in operations, but not just operations of satellites, but operations of astronauts in human space flight, then it becomes part of the family. So all of us are hunting together for business, but also hunting together for new flight.
Sharon, in Dassault systems, I mean, it's a software system. It sounds kind of impersonal, but it has an important role to play in putting humans back into space, doesn't it?
Yes, actually, we have many companies now researching a lot of things in space. Like one company is thinking of growing vegetables, and so they are building this interstellar hub.
They're planting plants on,
Yes,
on
yes,
Moon, yeah.
yes, and how they self-sustain in the system itself. So I would say that in our ecosystem supporting startup, we do see very, very interesting ideas coming together. And for us, able to provide them the platform for them to collaborate and giving them the exposure to also a global community, I think for me that's exciting.
So do you see the suit as being the only hope for humanity to have a role in the future of space? I mean, in the sense that you can synthesize machine and human intelligence.
It's a hand in glove when you look at technically robots support people, people support robots, they're going to work together. I think a project like this is about making it easier to send people, because the argument is always, well, it's risky to send people, so let's just send a robot. And the reality is, as our human economy is now growing into low Earth orbit, tripling in the next few years, right? And as people occupy that again, then we're going to need products like this in order to go further. So it's going to be two ends of that candle.
I'm now forwarding a paper called Dispelling the Myths of Robot Efficiency. If you look at the samples that have come back from the lunar missions, the rovers are still there in terms of investments. I'm not sure what the output is from the images that are coming back. So this isn't a robot versus human conversation. This is both of them working in tandem in the future.
I think this is a great last question. How can the people here, people like myself, help and contribute to Metakosmos?
Oh, look, everyone's context, it's a platform. Nobody else before this platform has ever had a chance to produce research or product or sensors that could fit and get access to an actual astronaut suit, let alone other use cases that have been mentioned today that are a bit more down to earth. The whole kind of scale of it. There's a research plug-in and there are commercial tie-ins to that as well.
So for us, we have a partnership with Metakosmos on the startup program. So we continue to support that. On top of that, I told him that as long as he can show me the design on the screen, I'm going to promote it internally, because Dassault System is a big company. We have a big ecosystem that we can get exposure for him, to present his company, his ideas to many people, I think.
I think for us, it's about marrying that opportunity that exists within their networks with our requirement set. I realized that that's the toughest part. Like, I went to CSIRO after COVID, and I saw the potential to collaborate with so many people, which wasn't just evident on emails or websites for some reason. So I think, to answer his question, if we could find out what are those things that are on the edge in their domain, and we have our requirements ready, if we could get them together, that would be the best way we could help each other.
Excellent. Jason, Sharon, Kiriti, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the audience.